Hey guys, welcome back to Shelf Life Media. I'm Blake, and today I'm introducing a new series. This series is going to be called Classic Movie Reviews. Now, I had to think a little bit on what I wanted to do for this first episode. I wanted to do my favorite movie of all time, Back to the Future, but I decided on a different movie just because I feel like right now is the perfect moment to do so. The first movie I've decided to talk about on this new series is 2013's The Conjuring. The reason I decided to do this as the first episode is because the new film is out in theaters right now, The Conjuring Last Rites, and I figured it's a perfect time and it's almost Halloween, so I figured perfect opportunity to do this for a first episode. I also believe this movie is a classic, so let's go ahead and get into it and why I believe this movie is a classic. First, right when you start the film, you immediately get introduced to one of the most iconic horror characters of the modern time, and that is Annabelle. Just in those opening 5 minutes, it created such an iconic character that is talked about all the time in the horror genre. People buy dolls of it like it's Chucky. So yeah, it's gotten very, very huge since the film came out. It also introduces Ed and Lorraine Warren so perfect in this film. You immediately jump in on a case they're working, which is Annabelle. It then cuts off like a PowerPoint presentation and it zooms out and it shows Ed and Lorraine speaking to a class. And they were giving a presentation on the Annabelle case that they had dealt with years before. From there you get a freeze frame and some words, sort of narration of what their backstory is and what the film is going to be about, sort of like how Star Wars does in a way. And then you get The Conjuring as it goes up with some very intense music, and it just perfectly sets the tone for what the rest of the film is going to be like. The pacing of this movie is also done so well, in my opinion. You basically follow the family that's moving into this new home, and you see all the events that are happening to them, and what leads them to the point of contacting Ed and Lorraine. Meanwhile, you get to see Ed and Lorraine doing their own thing, so you're growing a connection with both of these groups of people. You're growing a connection with a family that's being tormented by these demons, and then you're building a relationship with Ed and Lorraine Warren. And then there's a certain point where they meet and they combine, and you already have a good base on who this family is and who Ed and Lorraine are. And yeah, I just think that's done very well. And speaking of building relationships with the audience and the family of this film, that's something I think the newest Conjuring had a very lack of. And this film, you really see the connection and the relationships with the sisters of the family, and especially with the mother and the kids, because later the mother ends up becoming possessed and goes after her kids. So building that relationship between the kids and the mother is very important for later in the film when that happens. Lorraine also being a mother herself is also important to build up there, because that also has something to do with the ending of the movie. Now, this film also has some very iconic shots. The cinematography of this movie is so good. One of my favorite scenes of this movie is the basement scene at the end where they do the exorcism. I think the basement, the whole lighting in that basement, and the intensity of it is just done so great. James Wan directed this movie, who had previously done Saw, Insidious. I mean, he's just a fantastic horror filmmaker. He also did The Conjuring 2, which I'm also a really big fan of. Unfortunately, he did not do Conjuring 3 and 4, and I think that's one of the things that makes those movies not as great, is James Wan is a big part of those, and he was not part of it for the third and fourth. Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are also a huge part of this film. They are so good as Ed and Lorraine. I do not see anybody else playing those parts. They are just so great as that, and they have such great chemistry together. You could make a really bad Conjuring movie, but as long as you cast Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga as Ed and Lorraine Warren, that will at least save it a little bit. There's also a great scene with hand clapping in a basement where the mother goes down into the basement following the hand claps, and she has a light, which is actually here on the cover here, so you can sort of get a reference what I'm talking about. There's a reason this scene is on all of the Blu-rays and the physical media of The Conjuring, and it's because it's such a well done, intense scene. You build up those hand claps, right? And then when she lights the lighter and it gets silent, all of a sudden you see these hands come out from behind her and they clap and the light goes out and then you hear screaming. that's done so very good. I also believe this movie has a good amount of comedic relief. One of the characters in the film is a police officer who's helping Ed and Lorraine with this investigation. He's a skeptic and doesn't believe in paranormal life or anything like that. So he's tagging along just for like security reasons, but also because he kind of wants to believe. But him being a skeptic in this film really brings some comedy throughout to sort of relieve some of the tension, and I think it's done really well, especially in later scenes where he finally encounters paranormal events for the first time and seeing his reaction to all that. If you have not seen The Conjuring, I highly recommend it. This is one of the best paranormal films of all time. It's up there with Poltergeist and The Exorcist, and it's definitely one of the best horror films of the 2010s. And those are the reasons why I believe The Conjuring is a 5 out of 5 classic and a perfect choice for my first episode of this new series. If you like this stuff, you like movies, comic books, or anything really pop culture, give me a like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.